We're going to be continuing to discuss what happened in the courtroom in Kenosha, Wisconsin today. The jurors are now dismissed for day 2 of deliberations. They've deliberated for most of the day here, so we have no verdict still. Right now, though, to break it all down, I'm being joined by legal expert Andrew Tchaikovsky. Andrew, good to see you. You've been watching this alongside us as well. What did you make today of the defense's motion for yet another mistrial in this?
Well, there's a lot that has to be done to ensure that all of the legal issues that came up through trial are being properly brought before the judge. So if there's any chance on appeal of some of these issues, it's actually on the table. Now, some of these are low odds types of motions, things that aren't likely to happen. But when it comes to the issue with the video file size, it is interesting that the government did not give the defense the same version that they had. And through the trial, the quality of the video actually became an issue. And that's really one of the big things that comes down to a mistrial, is whether the error that occurred or the bad evidence that occurred could have had a change on the outcome or the defense's theory. So it is an interesting motion, although not one I think is going to be granted, at least not before the jury gets back.
You know, Andrew, are they chalking this up as kind of a procedural mistake in the evidence, or was there some strategy behind this with the quality of video that was first presented and then the discrepancy about the quality? Does that happen very often? Have you seen that happen with evidence, you know, especially during jury deliberations? I mean, this might have, you know, come up in court, and it did, like you mentioned, but during the deliberation itself?
Well, the quality and the way that digital evidence is exchanged between sides is almost always an issue. And it's something that I often deal with as a criminal defense attorney. The prosecution sends you over some key piece of video that they're going to use in their case, and they send you a low quality version, maybe because it's easier to send over the internet or something like that. And you actually get to it and you start looking at it and you compare it to ultimately what the prosecution has, because that's typically what a defense attorney does, is they have to go through that process of making sure that they have the right version of things. And here it seems like it took longer than perhaps it takes in certain cases, and they discovered that it wasn't the same quality. The prosecutors are saying that it wasn't intentional, that it's just an accidental thing, and that's what the difference would be if the judge sees this as a mistrial issue, something that's that catastrophic, whether it's with prejudice or without. If the prosecutor was doing it intentionally, that could very much be a with prejudice type of ruling. But I don't see that happening here, and it's not what the defense is asking for at this point.
And Andrew, let's talk about the other piece of video evidence that some of those jurors requested that they wanted to see again in replay. Is that rare, or does that happen very common during jury deliberations? What did you make of it?
That's very common when you see jurors are disagreeing with or having different memories of what the evidence actually showed. And so jurors might be having an active conversation. Well, I remember it looking this way and I remember it looking that way. It might be the timing that things occurred, or any other number of things where they're kind of debating what they remember seeing. And why not just ask for that piece of video? And you have to remember that since we're looking for a unanimous jury in their findings here, it could be just one juror who's trying to make a point of it. And so it might not reflect the entire jury's thoughts on what's going on.
You know, that's such a good point, because, you know, they went on this back and forth. They did not know if it was even legally permissible to have a piece of evidence replay for a juror. And so what you're kind of intimating is that there could be some dissension amongst the ranks of jurors, possibly not unanimous, of course not unanimous. We don't have a verdict yet. So are you kind of highlighting that there could be some disagreement about what to do with the charges?
I'm going to say up to this point, I don't see it as evidence that there's necessarily disagreement. We're still within a reasonable amount of time, given that this was a multiple week-long trial where the jurors could just be going through a very systematic approach of looking at the evidence, discussing it, discussing how they see things before they're even getting to the idea of whether there's dissension and holdouts and whatnot. If we go much longer into the day tomorrow, that starts to look that way. It starts to look that there really would be dissent, because I think that at that point, after 2 days, they've really had that time to debate it, and now we're seeing butting of heads.
And Andrew, play out these scenarios, of which there could be multiple, of, you know, if it's not unanimous amongst the jury, then what happens?
Well, really, that ultimately comes out as a hung jury. So if they stay back there and they ultimately become deadlocked, and that usually takes anywhere between a few days and a week or so, it depends on how the judge's temperament is on a jury's claim of deadlock, then it results in a mistrial, and the state of Wisconsin's allowed to bring the charges again. They could theoretically change the charges in some regard, but it could come back to trial. It's really what we call a hung jury.
Yeah, and I wanted to get your opinions on a lot of discussion that has been made recently on kind of the behavior and eccentricities of the judge, Judge Schrader, in the courtroom. Do you think, he's being too conversational, too friendly, or do you think that's just, chalked up to his personality, that there are judges like this all across the United States?
I don't see anything that's worthy of criticism of this judge. He certainly has a personality. It's his courtroom. He has to maintain control of that courtroom and make sure that justice is being done really at all times. So the fact that he's shining through a little bit and making commentary about what he thinks the media might be hyperbolizing or going over the top on, I think that just reflects that he's in his own domain, and he's making sure that people know and the public know that the decisions that he is making are thoughtful decisions and with the ideas of justice, and that he likely doesn't appreciate people undermining that intent that he's got going in.
Because one of the kind of clarifying statements he made yesterday that got a lot of attention on social media was the way in which the jurors and their numbers were selected and who did the selecting. Kyle Rittenhouse, he said that has been done in his courtroom, since I think time immemorial, were his words. What did you make of that?
It's very normal in courtrooms all across America to have some sort of lottery system, and it's usually a ball in a wheelie bin, or it's some sort of computer system that spits out a random generated series of numbers. That's usually what I see as a computer system. But everybody is very suspect of that. And it's something that everybody wants to make sure is being done correctly, and that certain jurors aren't getting placed by the other side. Well, this judge sees it as what's most fair to put that in the hands of the accused person, the one who's sitting in the chair. And so that's the person who has the most on the line, and he can see with his own eyes and his own hand that he's picking something truly randomly and can't question that. I think that the judge's logic in that is relatively sound. I don't see an issue with it. It is quite unusual, though.
I'm kind of chalking it up to, because there are a lot of people, including myself, who, do not know the intricacies of what is done in court, the norms, the customs. And so to a lot of people watching, it's quite foreign and strange. But to someone like yourself, who's in a courtroom so often, these are normal things. These are normal courses of action. Do you think there's a disconnect there between the public and those in the courtroom?
There's certainly at least some degree of that. And I think that it's really what gets lost behind the scenes in movies and TV shows. When we see lawyers, we always see the action. We always see the good arguments coming out, but we don't see what's kind of going on behind the scenes, all of the administration. I was just in court this morning, and it's very administrative. Everybody's looking down at their papers. There's a certain speech pattern that's had. It's kind of an inside sort of thing to get the administration moving along. And so you develop these patterns, and once those patterns, like having the accused pick his own alternates, comes out, and others see how unusual it is, sometimes it doesn't even occur to the people back there at home in their home station how unique their administration is.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Last question, Andrew. Where do you think this is all going? We're now 2 days worth of deliberations. What we were just talking about is normal, and that's not a long time. So, we don't want to speculate about when the jury will be done, but what are you feeling?
I'm surprised that it's lasted this long. I think that the evidence in this case really strongly supports to a not guilty finding on account of self-defense having been sufficiently established and the government being unable to disprove it. So I see this as a very straightforward case. I'm surprised that we're 2 days in, but like I said earlier, when you have this much evidence over a couple of weeks, the jury really wants to make sure that they are showing everybody that they're giving this case the time that it deserves, that they are showing respect to the evidence that was presented to both sides. So even if it comes back one way or the other, this time really demonstrates how much effort they put into it. At this point, I think we should be getting close to a verdict. I would certainly think so if we don't have deadlock, if we don't have people truly butting heads. So we'll see, I think, by the end of tomorrow, either a verdict or I think we're starting to really worry that there's going to be deadlock.